It's the Winging It F1 podcast, and I'm with. Oh, I've messed that up straight away. Hello, it's the Winging It F1 podcast with myself and Nigel Chew. I'm with Freddie Coates. Hello, it's the Winging It F1 podcast, and this is the third take at me doing an intro because I've messed up so many times. But I'm with Freddie Coates and Adam Dickinson as usual, and that's all that matters. How are you guys doing this week?
Yeah, I'm getting through all of these introductions. It's as if I don't know how I am now, but I think I'm all right.
You all right, Adam?
Yeah, I'm good. I've not been run out of town like Freddie has. I'm still at my university accommodation. And yeah, just kind of enjoying the F1 free weekend so I can get some work done, really. How are you, Nigel?
Yeah, you shouldn't have asked that. Did one answer?
Moving swiftly on.
It's been difficult, I'll say that.
It's a very awkward time for everyone. And yeah, just so everyone knows, every audience member knows, everyone's going to be there for you and all of that. So stay strong, everyone. Difficult time with the lockdown, but you'll be fine.
Let's talk about some news then. We saw after the Emilia I can't remember the name of the Grand Prix. The Imola Grand Prix.
Emilia Romagna.
There was an incident with Lance Stroll who nearly ran over a marshal at turn 8 or 9 down the hill. Can't quite remember which corner. And yeah, it could have been pretty serious. It was happening during the safety car when the lapped cars were unlapping themselves. And it's not the first time we've seen this kind of incident. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on the incident and what should have happened and what can be done in the future? Freddie?
Yeah, so just to explain the incident a bit more, there was when lap cars were allowed to unlap themselves to rejoin the back of the safety car queue, there were still marshals on track clearing up debris from George Russell's shunt going into Acqua Minerale around the back of the track at Imola. And a few cars, there's a few clips were seen because of F1 TV having full onboard on these cars. A few clips did the rounds on social media. And you had a few drivers, Kimi Räikkönen and Sebastian Vettel, going through and then seeing the marshals there. They hadn't been told that there were double waved yellows still at that part of the track because the teams had just been told that lap cars could get back to the pack, basically. And these cars came and they had to really slow down. And Vettel said on the radio how dangerous it was. Stroll came round and didn't slow down as much as everyone. So Stroll's been the one who's been the main fear of this. But yeah, his sector 2 time on that lap was only a second and a half slower than his fastest sector 2 time, I think. So he was flooring it round basically where people were on track. And the fact that marshals were still working on track while we were on a lap before the race was due to get going again is quite. I'm not very comfortable with that. We've had lots of incidents of marshals. Only 10 years ago was a marshal killed from debris at the Canadian Grand Prix in 2010, I think. And it's not something that looked very comfortable. I've seen the footage. I saw it on Sunday, Monday, around then after the race, and it's unsafe for these people to be put in those positions. I know they're motorsport marshals, but I think, I don't know if there's people seem to think there's been a few issues with Michael Masi. I think he's a very good race director, and he's got a tough job to follow, obviously, Charlie Whiting, but there's been a few things where it's been a little bit, let's get the race going rather than let's double check this and get the race going. The lights at Mugello on the safety car spring to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're marshals, but they're not matadors. It's scary viewing and I imagine for the marshal, it kind of will have been over before he'll have even, kind of realised it because they're travelling so fast. There's no time to jump out at the speed that Stroll was going and that these cars go. Yeah, I agree. Even if, they feel that the ultimate priority is safety, it still matters whether we as fans and viewers get that feeling coming across from the TV as well. And as you said, there's been a few incidents where maybe that hasn't been coming across as, it's been more, let's get the race back on.
I think it's just an absolute disgrace to have this kind of incident. I mean, imagine if the worst had happened. Imagine trying to explain that at court. What can you say that?
Well, the FIA would say we have double waved yellows from the exit of Piratella, and then they'd say the drivers should have seen the double waved yellows. But then the drivers and teams would say this shouldn't have been the case for this part of the track. And I think there needs to be a strict. I haven't read the regulations about how a car can unlap itself, and I don't think it's a part of the regulations that will be that embellished. I don't think it would have much information about when you can release the cars. And I reckon there probably just needs to be a footnote put in there saying, as soon as the track is at green conditions, then cars can unlap themselves.
Yeah.
And then you have another lap as yellow if you want to do that. But where cars are lapped, I mean, at the end of the day, that only really is there as a cosmetic racing response. That's not a safety issue. So that should not be used at all when safety is of paramount concern. It's a safety car. It's a period where the track is unsafe. So the cars shouldn't be able to go around because the track is unsafe for everyone, not just for the cars. And that seems to need that. I think that needs to be reinforced. It's a safety car is there to keep marshals safe as well as keep drivers safe. So I think we need to focus on that more.
I think maybe have a delta of, kind of 25% or a VSD delta, say, for unlapped cars. So they're going around, they're able to get some advantage, because it's also about them not getting mixed up with kind of the pack on the lead lap when the lights go green, which could, be another safety issue. So, they're able to get out of the way. And then, as you said, maybe once the track's green, have, another lap of safety car, which gives them more time to come around to the back. And then go. I mean, it's kind of a wider issue as well. Earlier this year, there was George Russell at Mugello kind of got swamped at the start after, was it Giovinazzi and Vettel? I think that was under red flag, but where they'd been able to go around.
Yeah, that was because when they unlapped themselves, they went to everyone else was sat in the pit lane, so their tires they had basically 2 formation laps. But that's a bit different when it comes to a safety car restart.
Oh, yeah, but it's just kind of in general, there seems to be more debate than I can remember for a while about the kind of whole way it's structured.
So you think the unlap rule at the moment is okay, Adam? What do you say? Yes, they can change the speed. Cars unlapping themselves is a good thing.
Yeah, because if they don't, then it will just be a mess. Because as soon as the lights go green, then they'll just have to pull off to the side, let everyone else come through. So having them in the pack isn't an answer, but I just think things should change the way they manage that.
Well, they managed to do it in other series, though. Won't they?
Well, I kind of think to Le Mans with this and WEC, and when they have a safety car out for those series, they just line up, and you've got, say, if a GT car is the first car to be picked up by a safety car, it will be a GT car at the front, then it will be an LMP1, then it will be an LMP2, then it will be a GT Am, GT Pro, and so on. And they just have it wherever the safety car is. And Le Mans, they have 3 safety cars because the track's so big. But for, say, it's at Silverstone or something, wherever the safety car is, that will be the queue. But I think in F1, there's fewer cars on the track, and they're all similar speeds. So arguably, you could then say it'd be fine to have them in the pack. But what Adam says, you would then have a really weird situation where cars are just tripping over themselves and they're not at the right speed. I don't really know. Now, I've sort of spoken myself into a corner with this, and I think it's very obvious to see, because some other series are fine. They just have a safety car and then they don't have a safety car. But obviously Formula One is at the height of the scrutiny on this, and they need to do everything to the nth degree with the entertainment as well as with the safety. And I think, entertainment is fine. Prioritize entertainment with unlapping the cars and make sure it's safe to get that entertainment first.
But it's also, you know, how much entertainment do people get from watching, you know, drivers scrapping for like 13th place after they've been lapped? I don't think it's kind of a massive.
I think you get more entertainment from, say, the scrap between second and third not being interfered by the car in 12th.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, but it is like you say, blue flags being straight out on lap 2 after a safety car restart for not just for one car, it would be for 4 or 5 cars. Yeah, you have lap cars when in gaggles sometimes, but usually it's spaced out enough. But if you've got, say, 13, 14 cars trying to get through 5 cars at once, with cars going slowly, other cars going at full racing speed, like you say, that shouldn't be on as well. So,
and also, you know, say you've got one racing point on the lead lap, one not, there's going to be confusion there. You know, if you're another driver coming through, you might not know which one you're able to pass. Or out of the lap cars, the person in 20th could gain, you know, 7 places if they can get through, and everyone else thinks, oh no, it's another car that we need to let through. So I think it would be fair
with that, that's a bit more just a general thing. Like if there's cars being lapped and then someone who's one of the lap cars uses it to an advantage, fair enough. They're doing that. It reminds me of Verstappen in Monaco in 2015. He was being lapped, and he was the car ahead of him was being lapped, so the car had pulled over. So when he was lapped, Verstappen, he then just tucked up behind, I think it was Vettel, just drove straight past the car he was trying to get past, and it was brilliant. He did like 3 or 4 moves like that, and he got into the points before he crashed, obviously. But that's racing for that part of it. That's using the strategy of the blue flag. And obviously cars block each other every now and again, but that's a bit like 1997 Jerez. I can't remember who it was. I want to say Fontana in the Sauber, who was told you won't have an F1 seat unless you block Villeneuve and let Schumacher lead and that kind of thing. So he did just block Villeneuve and then was sacked anyway. But that's quite a fancy story. But I think lapping cars happens. And unless every car drove at the exact same pace, cars are going to be lapped. If a car, even if they're all really close to each other, cars are going to have to get damaged and go to the pits and need to be lapped. Just when they're unlapping themselves after the safety car, it's a good fun thing. It gives a bit more to the race. It means all the cars are on the lead lap and means there's a lot more possibility, and that's cool. But make it safe to do so. Please don't put volunteer marshals at risk. And I think that's just the basis of the point. Don't put lives at risk.
So last point on this, is there a case that Stroll drove too fast? Because I think Vettel and Raikkonen did slow down quite a bit.
Yeah, I'd say there definitely is.
I think there was definitely nothing on the team radio from Racing Point to Stroll. There was double waved yellows notifications. I think I'll need to double check on this, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I think there was a double waved yellow notification for Vettel and Raikkonen, and a few others, but that there wasn't to Stroll.
Okay. Yeah. Doing big news from this week. Big news was about the Saudi Arabian street circuit, which we have discussed already in the past with the Saudi Arabia getting a Grand Prix. It's going to be in Jeddah towards the end of next year. I'm trying to think of what my question should be. I mean, the obvious question is, should F1 race in Saudi Arabia? But is F1 doing the right thing?
It depends how much Saudi Arabia is going to advance itself as a country. And I think the issue a lot of people have with the majority of the population in Saudi Arabia is below 30. And the majority of the rulings in Saudi Arabia in recent years have been, comparatively to obviously the history there, are getting more and more progressive. But on a global scale, they are, and on a Western global scale, they are a very backward country. And whether Saudi is going to progress as it in some ways has been, a bit more forward thinking and a bit more as it should be with its civil liberties, then it's less of an issue. But obviously, that's not the case currently. And when you have a whole year with end racism placards across Formula One, the "We Racers Won" slogan being championed on every logo that Formula One has, and time put aside at the beginning of every Grand Prix for an end racism message and for the drivers and teams to show their support for anti-racism, this is just, it comes across as a bit of a farce when you put it like that. And I think Saudi Arabia, it's got money, and that's it.
Yeah. Freddie's dog.
Freddie has a dog.
My dog is very angry about Saudi
Yeah,
Arabia.
he clearly agrees with us that one of the countries with the worst human rights should not be hosting sports events. Yeah, Adam, what are your thoughts on this? Obviously, we've had other major sports
Look at that.
in the Middle East as well. Yeah, what are your thoughts on F1 having a night race in Saudi Arabia?
I think generally F1 said, we're going to try and use it as a positive influence, but how many countries has F1 been to with dodgy human rights records and claimed it's their act?
And it's not changed anything.
Yeah. China, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Russia.
Bahrain.
Yeah.
Bahrain had a race cancelled in 2011. F1 went back in 2012.
Yeah. So I don't really buy that. I think Amnesty International gave a statement last week when it was being mooted, saying the drivers should be speaking out about these issues. Obviously, for the press covering the event, there was the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, which was very heavily, allegedly, perpetrated by the Saudi government in Turkey. So it will be interesting to see whether any mention of that is made. I probably doubt it, but that'll be something to keep an eye on.
Nothing will be said on the ground, I don't think.
The teams said, I think in August, when there was when the rumours were first starting to begin, the teams all said that they would ensure that their female staff get the same rights as male staff within the country. So there's kind of all that happening within F1, but then outside of it, I don't know. They're not going there to try and change the human rights record. They're going there to get a cash grab.
Yeah.
So, Formula One, it's a cash grab. For Saudi Arabia, it's look at us. We're a cool country now, and it's trying to advertise Saudi Arabia. And the only way they can all I can think of a positive in Formula One going there is that it does bring the tourist sport of Saudi Arabia on the side of, well, actually, maybe we do need to shake it up, because look at all of this, it's not working. We pay for all of these sports events. We pay for Joshua Ruiz. We pay for Formula E. We pay for one of the big football finals. Was it you? I don't know which one it was. But we pay for all of these, and we aren't getting tourists. Maybe we're not getting tourists because we're really quite far right. Let's look at it like that, and maybe that will help. But that's clutching at straws of hope.
It's interesting. The ESPN journalist asked the Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull drivers, as well as the team principals, so Matteo Binotto, and he said Toto Wolff, but his name is actually Christian Horner, about their thoughts on the Saudi Arabian race, and it was all pretty predictable. Red Bull essentially said that they just put the responsibility towards Liberty, and Ferrari and Mercedes essentially said it might bring change and it might be a positive impact. Should the teams and drivers be more, what's the word? Should they have a bigger say, or should they say something about this essentially?
They're not going to get paid if they do. Ferrari and Mercedes, they're going to sell, particularly Ferrari, they're going to sell a lot to Saudi Arabia. Red Bull presumably sells to Saudi Arabia. Sponsors of every team. Yeah, you can say, oh, Williams, they're not a manufacturer, say. They can speak out. But Williams was their first championship winning car was sponsored by a company called Saudia. So all these teams are going to have business links that are going to prevent anyone from speaking. And I imagine even if they want to speak, drivers are going to be worried.
But I think drivers that are secure in their position, if Lewis Hamilton speaks out against it, or Max Verstappen speaks out against it, Red Bull aren't going to go, right, you're fired.
No. Yeah, completely.
And, we hear all this stuff from Lewis about, Mercedes is such a good company to work with. He's clearly rightly proud of the stuff they've done on BLM.
Definitely.
That's to be completely saluted. But, on the flip side, for all these teams, if they're then saying, actually, well, we're not going to speak out of this because we want more money, that's not really a great, moral position to be in, I think. I think they should be kind of speaking out about it and trying to make positive change there rather than just going, oh, it's not for us, it's for Liberty, when, not got too much faith in kind of Liberty doing much either, because the same reason that it extends to the teams, it extends to them. They're not going to get paid so much or, to go back to Saudi Arabia if they speak out about it.
It'll be interesting to see if all these rainbow designs they've had this year, which have looked brilliant and have been fantastic, and you've got on the grandstand, just haven't been there, you've had a rainbow basically with the teams. You've had a rainbow on the front of McLaren's halo and so on. Be interesting to see if those sort of disappear a bit when they go to a country that doesn't recognise that trans people are, it's illegal to be trans. And it'll be interesting to see how all of that goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've discussed it as well on previous podcasts, I think twice over the last couple of months. It's not the first time we talked about Saudi Arabia and F1. So, go watch them if you want to know more about our opinions, which is a dangerous thing. Huh?
A card will come up in the corner that will take you to that video.
Exactly. Thanks to editing. Brought to you by Adobe Premiere Pro.
Yes, I'll have to do editing now.
Yes. So watch out for that, it will definitely be there.
Let's have a DRS debate. McLaren's James King said that even after the new regulations in 2022, DRS will still be needed. We've not really had a debate about DRS. Is it something we like? Is it something that F1 needs?
Those are two very different questions. It is definitely something that F1 needs. And I'm going to be honest, I quite like it because it works most of the time. So I think, it does help soften the problems that Formula One has with aerodynamics, basically. And I like the fact that it does that. So I think I like it, and I think F1 needs it.
Okay.
I agree with that, and especially going into 2021, when a lot of things will be untested until we, touch down in Melbourne, hopefully. I don't think getting rid of it, if we get rid of it and then 2 races in, there's been 3 overtakes because the rules haven't worked as intended, going to be very bad luck. So I think, especially for 2021, keep it in, see how the rules kind of go and how teams interpret them and how things develop, and then, kind of look at whether it's still needed after that. But I've not got too much against it, especially at the moment. It's quite a satisfying little thing to see as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because Ross Brawn and Liberty Media, when they first came into the sport, I think they said they wanted to get rid of DRS, but now, as time's gone on, they've kind of gone against that in a way. And I do think it's a shame they can't find a solution, or they're not backing themselves enough with the new rules that DRS won't go.
Well, what's an interesting part of that James Key interview that you cited there? It was on Race Fans, and he said at the end of it, I read it the other day. He said DRS there will probably still play its role in making sure you can guarantee an overtake, as it stands, its authority would be less. I tend to agree with that. So what he's saying there is DRS is going to be have less of an impact with these new rules, and that's based on the CAD models they've seen and everything and interpretations they've had. So I think it is a step in the right direction to not having DRS, and who knows, maybe, as Adam says, it would be something to not have. We were unwittingly treated to a non-DRS race trial at Abu Dhabi last year, where DRS failed. One of the detection points failed for about 25 laps, and I mean, yeah, it was still obviously the same issue at the front of the cars being spaced out, but the cars that were close together were still racing, to be honest. And when they were getting close to the back of each other, they were still able to fight. And the fight for the sixth place in the constructors with Sainz, Albon, and Gasly was still going on pretty hammer and tong with that. So even without DRS, so I think it can be done without DRS, and it'd be interesting to see what happens in years in the future, 23, 24, to see if there are, where we say, oh, let's do a reverse gear trial now. If we say, let's do a trial race without DRS, say, then I think we are going in the right direction to shake it off.
I think two things. Firstly, still track specific as to whether you need it or not, I'd say, for a large part. But also, so maybe that could be looked at as, not having it on some tracks, keeping it on others and seeing how that impacts it. But also, that quote when Braun came into F1 and, we want to get rid of it. I feel like that kind of might have been wanting to make a splash as well, because they know that it's something that a lot of fans love to hate. So if they come in and, we're going to get rid of it, kind of this utopian future. I don't know how much it will have been that and how much it will have been actually wanting or feeling like they should get rid of it.
Point, yeah. The biggest hope is that the 2022 cars do allow closer racing, which enables DRS to not be a thing. That is my biggest hope. I don't think it will happen, but I can only dream of it, I guess. Yeah.
I said this before the podcast, but I'll say it again now. I think my biggest hope for the 2022 regulations is more of a parity on performance. And I think even if cars are, having difficulty overtaking, if we have a parity on performance and have different cars getting different results all the time and being able to be in a position to be close to racing and overtaking and maybe leading to a strategic battle, say, with the team involved and basically cars that are close together, you've got more teams fighting for the win, basically. I think that's more what I'm looking for from the 2022 regulations. I don't know if that's more just because I've sacked off the fact that overtaking won't be better, because I'd normally, if you make any hopes about that, then you are absolutely shot in the foot. But I think I'm more looking for parity than overtaking anyway. If you get an overtake every lap, then after lap 20, you won't have any overtakes, and that's an extreme case. And the cars will just drive away from each other if they can overtake, say.
Well, if you get an overtake every lap, then, for Monaco, you get 72 overtakes or however many laps they have.
78.
But, I think one thing that I quite like, but it leads to a not negative feedback loop, but it'd be exploited, is kind of having DRS when from 2 seconds to 1 second behind the car. So it kind of would allow a driver to close in, but then they still got to make it. The only problem with that, and I can see that Monty disagrees with it heavily, is that, you can completely exploit it and just kind of keep stuck at, 1.1 seconds behind the driver in front and leave that. But yeah, I agree with what Freddie says, having the cars closer together will lead to better racing and better spectacles, just by virtue of there being more in play.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Doing it from 1 to 2 seconds. I quite like that. I'd like to see F1 try that out, actually.
It's a very interesting idea. It's whether when they get within 1 second, they just fall back into the DRS bit, though.
Yeah. You need to have cars that can overtake for that to happen.
I kind of think an interesting, similar to that, but maybe having it from 0 to 1.5 seconds, because you see a lot of cars struggling to get to the 1 second barrier, and you see it always being like a little push to get there, but they're always in the 1.5 second. But I don't know whether that would just mean that it would neuter any battles and make DRS too powerful then, because cars could then just get closer easier. And I think, like you say, the 2 to 1 second still makes the overtake a massive challenge, but it means you can get close, but then you've still got to really fight when you're in that dirty air. So it's a whole new fight. It's interesting.
I think what they'd have to do is kind of say you can have it for 3 laps, say, within that window. And then if you're still not closed kind of in after that, then you lose it, which would hopefully prevent a bit of exploitation.
Well, that would certainly incite dive bombs.
Exactly. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, interesting debate there on the DRS.
It's an interesting perspective, is to throw the now or never jeopardy into like lap 6 or something. Because if someone's going to make you'd say, oh, be patient, don't make a move like that now. But if they have to make that move, then that's really quite interesting.
Imola used the 2-day weekend format. We also saw the 2-day format inadvertently at the Nürburgring as well. Is this something we're a fan of? Do we want to see it more in F1 calendars, especially with more races on the schedule?
I quite liked it.
Would you?
I think for the fan, that's the biggest loser from it. I think that's kind of, it's impossible to really get around that, kind of cutting down a third of the chance that fans have to see F1 cars running. So, yeah, I think for me that is that's quite a big one. But equally, it certainly made what would have been FP3, certainly made the Saturday morning practice more interesting to follow. Whether it had an impact on the race, I'm not sure.
I don't think it did when you had the Mercedes on locking out the front row and then Max Verstappen in third. I don't really think it had much impact on the actual race result. I did quite like it because I didn't like having to sit around for a day and wait for qualifying. And if you've got nothing on in your life, and you get a bit, you're like, oh yeah, F1's back. Oh, it's practice. Then you've got to wait 24 hours, and then it's another practice session. And then it's qualifying, and then you've got to wait 24 hours, and then it's the race. It's like, there's not as much waiting around, but I don't know, that's probably me being spoiled.
Yeah, I think with me and formats, as you two know, I like seeing a variety across the season. So have a 2-day format, say in Russia, because it's boring. Have it in Abu Dhabi, because it's boring. Have it in France, because it's still boring. Those kind of tracks. But
have 3-day in Silverstone when you have fans there all like lining the track on Friday morning at 6 a.m. Yeah,
Silverstone, Spa, Japan, Australia, those types of tracks where you get fans on the
Monaco.
Friday. Well, not the Friday, but
you get fans on the Thursday.
Yeah,
they've got no choice; they live there.
Yeah, roll out of their bachelor pads at 10:30 because they've been woken up by the sound of the engines going off.
I've got to go to work in 6 hours, guys. Come
on. You go to the bar. That's the same thing, isn't it? Sorry.
It's all right. Yeah, those types of tracks. Keep the 3-day format. Another format thing is the F2, F3 changes. So this is quite a big thing, actually. F2 and F3 will no longer race together at the same weekend, and both series will now have 3 races per weekend when they race. F3 is going to have 7 events, so 21 races over the season. Formula 2 will have 8 rounds, so 24 races over the season. Why is this happening, I hear you ask? Well, it's to decrease costs and to help the teams. To help the teams after the year of crisis, essentially, for them, and to keep the series going. There we go. Finally got the words out of my mouth.
Yeah,
it was just.
It also adds an element of Formula 2 in particular, and Formula 3 being very expensive series for young drivers. To have 16 and 17-year-olds for Formula 3 having to go out and get £1 million budget is a tough gig, because they're just going to be on the support series to Formula 1 for a bit. So now you can give Formula 3 a bigger platform by not having Formula 2 there, but also you can require them to have less money anyway. So it's more attractive to sponsors, particularly for Formula 3, and they don't have to pay as much money. So it really, for two championships which provide the majority of super license points, which is fair enough, because they're only really decent championships at that level these days, because they provide the majority of the super license points, then it takes more of an impetus. I mean, still there's an impetus on money for these opportunity for the super license points, but there's a little bit less of that impetus.
And do you think this is a good thing, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm still not completely wrapped my head around it, but
That's all right.
If we don't know how serious, or certainly kind of I don't know how serious the situation is for Formula 2 and Formula 3, whether it's kind of a not, last gasp, but, quite a significant thing that they need to work to, cut costs and keep running, or whether it's just kind of a preventative thing for the future. But, if it keeps costs down and, still provides a good quality of opportunity to the drivers, then, that can only be a good thing.
The opportunity for the drivers is a very interesting debate for Formula 2 in particular, when you have so many races this season have come down to a driver performing really well in qualifying, having to do the standard strategy and losing out because a tail ender crashes at the end, meaning that someone who did an alternative strategy can then do well. So it just Nikita Mazepin. And it means that some drivers oh god, the dog's being loud.
Nikita Mazepin fan.
He is a Nikita Mazepin fan, my dog. I'm gonna say this point in a second while I shut up my dog.
That sounds quite sinister, actually.
Right. Yeah, I think Freddie was talking about the formats. So with 3 races, I think, so at the moment they have a longer race with a pit stop and a reverse grid race. What I hope that they still have is a race that involves a pit stop. I don't really want to see
I'd agree. 3
races that are like half an hour long and there's no strategy involved. It's also a chance to perhaps even get rid of the reverse grid element.
I feel like, if anything, they'd expand it. I don't really know, but I think that's quite an important part of F2, especially F2 at the moment. So, it's something that they kind of have coming up through, all of their junior series have that element in. I don't know whether there could be something, another more F1 specific thing, because it's so geared towards preparing drivers for F1, but I don't really know what that would be. Freddie seems to be back and Monty's quiet. Freddie, do you want to finish your point?
So Formula 2 is a really expensive series and drivers pay a lot of money, and then drivers do well in qualifying and do everything they need to do. And then someone else makes a mistake, a safety car comes out, the driver who does really well in qualifying then can't score points and then isn't getting the results they deserve. Christian Lundgaard deserved to win at Mugello. He dominated that weekend, but he was unable to win because of incidents that happened that were out of his control. And similar to Matsushita's win in Spain, everyone was marveling about how he qualified 17th and still won. But that was just simply because there was a late safety car, and Callum Ilott, who had led the weekend and was leading the race by a solid chunk, then wasn't able to win the race where he deserved to win. So it raises the question of, is Formula 2 an entertainment series or is it a feeder series? If it's a feeder series, then we shouldn't really be chomping at the bit for the entertaining races, because we should be here to see the drivers perform, and then we should just base it all on qualifying, really. And it raises a lot of questions about what you get from Formula 2. And if you're paying a lot of money as a driver's sponsor, for that driver to then be shafted by something out of their control and then not end up. I mean, Callum Ilot's the main interesting point with this, because he's had a few situations taken away from him this season based on complicated strategies and so on, despite him always doing the job and qualifying pretty much. And he's now he's not in contention really for a Formula One seat, when arguably he's been one of the better, well, obviously been one of the better, I'd say one of the best Formula 2 performers this year. So it raises, there's a lot of questions about Formula 2 as a championship. And if this can make it easier for those to go under the radar because it's a bit cheaper, then maybe.
Me and Adam were discussing the format while he was away, Freddie, for a little bit then. What format would you like to see? Because we were discussing whether they should keep the reverse grid element, and should they still have the longer races with pit stops, and how short should the shorter races be and stuff like that?
I'd imagine they'd have 2 feature races kind of thing in sort of a BTCC kind of format. You have 2 sessions that you have a session decided by the grid, by qualifying, and then a race decided by the way the previous race finished. Mm-hmm. And then you have a reverse grid from, I don't know whether in BTCC it's from the results of the second or first race, or however that is. And I reckon something
results
like
of the second race, you draw it out from a ball from the bag.
Well, then I reckon it will be something like that. I mean, if you look at the gaps they've got to have races now, so this current year with F3 and F2 at concurrent weekends, they would have an F3 race on Saturday morning, an F2 race in the afternoon, and an F2 and F3 race on Sunday morning. So whether they'll have a race on Friday afternoon for F2, say, or an F2 race in the morning, an F2 race in the afternoon on Saturday, and F3, I would say the same format, and then one race on Sunday, whether they'll have 2 races on the Sunday, who knows? I'm not sure. They might be allowing might be doing a similar gap and allowing there to be a guest slot for something like W Series to do a 4th race. Obviously, W Series was supposed to support at the Mexican Grand Prix and the American Grand Prix this year. I think the American Grand Prix. So they might be allowing something like that to have a bit more of a bit more of a presence. There we are, on the Formula One support network.
Yeah. I think it is important, because when drivers graduate from F2 to F1, most of the time they're not in the same type of position. So, if you've got a title contender in F2, even Charles Leclerc, he went then to the back of the grid with Sauber for a year. Yeah. George Russell went to be on the back of the grid with Williams. So, I do think it's important kind of having the element of, racing when you are a bit further back. Obviously, it's not exactly the same. I also, just on the W Series point, I saw someone saying that the W Series should support the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, which is a very good point, and I think would be very interesting, but we've already discussed that.
Yeah. So, format changes galore for next year to save costs. I think that is the end of the podcast, unless Freddie or Adam wants to jump in any minute now, which it looks like is not going to happen. So, find us on Twitter at Wiggin It F1, Freddie Coates at FredCoates1999, Adam Dickinson at Adam Dickinson01, and me at Nigel C. Journo. And also Acast, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes. Those are the places to listen and watch this podcast. We will be back next week for a preview of the Turkish Grand Prix. They've got good human rights, haven't they? And also reviewing it.
It's becoming a politics podcast. What do you think of Trump?
Oh, let's not go there.
I like him.
Which one of them would win a quiz on Istanbul Park? That's the real question.
Joe Biden.
Find out next week. Or don't, because they're probably.
We've got President Erdogan as a guest.
And on that note,
I'm going to send an email for that. I'm going to see if we can get him as a guest on our Formula One podcast.
Oh, if not, then we can tweet it and see what happens. We had John Pott DM us on the FIA thing.
There we are.
Probably not actually him, but hey.
Oh well.
Right. On that note, I'm going to say Bye.
Let us know which dictators you want to join the podcast after that. Bye.